In today's layout process video, we'll be doing some freehand watercoloring, some quick tips on stitching, and a little bit of opposite tone stamping. This is all part of the Counterfeit Kit Challenge sketch challenge, and here is the sketch that we are working on, and I will show that a little bit more as we go. Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty, where I create with paper and photos in artful ways. And today we are indeed getting artful, not only with the layout, but also talking about art from my childhood. So I was back east visiting some family recently, including my parents, and my mom had a stack of stuff, and I couldn't bring it all home, but she'd saved many things from my childhood, including this artwork. And so I'm gonna stash the artwork somewhere, the original, and I took a photo of it, so that is what I'm going to scrapbook today. And of course I'm working with my Counterfeit Kit, since this is a Counterfeit Kit challenge. And if you don't know about CKC, I will give you lots of links below to find more info, including a scrapbook kit build video that I do at the beginning of every month. All right, as I've been chit-chatting, I have pulled out just a couple of supplies from my kit, including this heavy black paper, which is a Vicky Bouton Foundations mixed media paper. And I cut that down to a 4-inch strip, and I'm going to do a little bit of a split design here with this piece of paper. I will leave a bit of a border so that the left edge kind of ties in to the right side of the layout so that we have some cohesion happening there. And you'll see what happens interestingly with that mixed media paper and the watercolor paints that I'm going to be using, which are a mica infused paint. Now the paints that I have are no longer on the market, but there are plenty of other paints out there. If you do some searching on your favorite shops, you'll probably find something along those lines if you like how this particular watercolor style turns out. All right, with that done, I have made a couple of journaling notations on this photo, and that's part of the reason why I like to take pictures of older items, because you can do whatever you want with the photo once you've got it in your digital realm, and including writing on them. I did have somebody ask me recently how I'm liking my new Tim Holtz trimmer, and I will have a video for you soon on a full answer to that. One of the questions was, how do you measure 6.5 inches? And I just use another ruler to put a permanent mark on there with a Sharpie marker, and then I've got enough of the measurement tick marks that I need. So if you've been struggling with that, you can use that tip. I did go ahead and map my photo with this kind of circly, bubbly paper because we've got more circles that are going to come. I'm going to pop that sketch up on the screen so that you can be reminded about what we were trying to do. Now I'm pulling colors out of my photo, and I couldn't quite see well enough on this photo. I should have color corrected a little bit better because you can see it's pretty beige in the print, but the original is more yellow, so I think it could have used some color correction. At any rate, I'm doing the best I can, and I have pulled out colors that mostly go with that photo. And I've got my watercolors here that I need to activate with a little bit of water before we get to painting. Now my rinse cup is empty, but I do like a divided rinse cup, one for plenty of clean water so that I can get clean water and take it straight into my paint, and then one for rinse water, and that will be very important here because I will be switching back and forth between all these colors. And normally when I'm painting, I might use the same color over and over in different zones, but because I am freehanding all of this, I don't have pre-measurements for these circles, and I really have to do one at a time to try and get them to space out as equally as possible. And you'll see at the end that it's not quite perfect, but I'm okay with how it comes out. Now that first try at the paint, I did not like the red tone that I had. It was too orange. So I'm blotting up most of that paint. As you can see, it soaks into the basic paper, which is the striped paper, and it won't come off of that. If you're using watercolor paper, sometimes you can go ahead and lift off all of that color, but that's not the case today. So I just went over it with a better red tone that I liked, and I'm calling it good. So here is me speeding this process up a little bit, and I'm trying to keep my circles as evenly as possible. I am looking at where that left-hand edge is as I draw a half circle on the black paper, and then doing the same thing with the right-hand edge, and then just trying to guesstimate the same height of each circle. Now, I tend not to be great at this freehand style kind of stuff, but I'm just going with it today. And for the most part, it worked out, so I am pretty pleased. If this is not you, you can go ahead and take a little bit of a pencil and mark like the center of where each circle would be, and then like a tick mark at the top and bottom. That involves some math. I didn't want to do math. Maybe you don't want to do math, so I just did the best I can freehanding. And then to complete this off a little bit, there were some spatters in the photo. The spatters were a little bit bigger. I'm going to go more subtly here and get some of that color to spread around the layout again to create the cohesive finished project. All right, I set that aside to dry, and it didn't take too long. I do touch it to see if it's cool to the touch. If it is cool, that means there's still wetness there and it's not dry yet. I also look at my hand to see if there's any color transfer, and so those two methods usually work fine for me to see if this kind of thing is dry. Now, it did buckle a little bit, so I added a little glue for more firmness to my layers, and here you can see the loveliness of the mica in there and how the black reacts a little bit differently with some of the colors than the white paper does. So that was kind of interesting. It was only that one teal color that kind of did that. All right, I am going to go ahead and get my title in place, and then we're going to do a little bit more watercoloring around that title. And since we're working with circles here today, I am going to do a partial circle around that title up in the corner. And here I'm just freehanding it. I'm kind of using my wrist as a pivot point, so I will stick it more towards the corner of the paper and kind of drag my wrist in an arc to try and get a more circular circle. You'll see that it's not perfect, but I'm okay with that, and I'm just going to go with it. Now, you do want to be careful mixing particular colors here. When I've got yellow and purple, that can tend to make brown, and I start pulling in a little bit of that purple, which is starting to do it, but I kind of stopped right there and didn't mix it too much more. And I will come in and pull that color out just a little bit more. Well, actually, it's not pulling the color because it soaks in instantly to regular paper, so you can't continue to move that color anymore. So I am getting my paintbrush with just a very light touch of color, and then I can drag it out. And if I need to add more color, I can add more, because on plain paper especially, you can't take color away. If you're using a watercolor paper and sometimes a mixed media paper, you can use clean water to blot up or to reactivate the color and then blot it up with a paper towel or a rag. So sometimes you can erase color when you're watercoloring, depending on the tone of the color and the paper that you're using. All right, so I'm happy with how that little circle came out. It's got a little bit of burst of color heading into it, and I'm good with that. Now in the sketch, it had some layers going on around these areas. Particular, I think it was kind of some tag elements. I don't have any of that kind of thing in my Counterfeit Kit this month, so I'm going to do that same layering idea, but I'm going to use stamps. And on the black side, I'm going to use white pigment ink to get an opposite color, and then on the white side of the paper, which I'll do later, I will use black. I don't think I use a pigment ink, but it doesn't really matter. White only comes in pigment ink because of the science of color, so that's why I've got that going on over there. Pigment ink does take a little bit longer to dry, so you want to be careful not to smudge that as you continue working. I'm also using some tape here just to mask off areas that I don't want the ink to overlap my photo. This can be better done before you put your photo down, but I wasn't sure how all of these structures were going to come together, so I did adhere my photo first, and then I will use some masking to keep working around as we go. And here you see that tape going down in place again for masking as I tuck in more bits of imagery there. I'm going to add some of that up around my title area as well, masking off my subtitle. And there we go. That is going to be a lot of my layering. I do have in this same stamp set, which is an Avery Elle stamp set, I really like the options and scale to this floral, and it's got a couple of little bits like these bubbly prints as well as a tiny butterfly, and I'm going to use those as a little bit of a sprinkles around these elements that kind of fit along with the watercolor splatters as well. All right, so with all of that done, I am going to do a little bit of stitching. I'm not going to go over this in detail because I've done this before, but pre-punch your holes. I like to use a needle threader to get my thread through my needle. I do use either an embroidery or a tapestry needle because you want a nice big eye on this. And then once your holes are pre-punched, the stitching really does go pretty fast. I'll go ahead and tape my tail down, and then I will just go ahead and stitch. Typically, I will use a back stitch for stitching, but because I'm using this really thick, twisted baker's twine, I did start doing that back stitch, which you'll see here in a moment, and I didn't like how it came out. So I will end up doing just a plain running stitch where you just go down, up and down and up and down, and you don't have to do the back part of a back stitch. So I've got my first couple stitches in place. This is where I did do that back stitch where you can see it fills in every single stitch mark. And because of the twist of the baker's twine, I didn't like it. So I ended up doing this stitch, which is just the running stitch. And if you need more info on these different stitches, there are lots of YouTube videos out there that can help you. I'm not sure I can quite remember which videos I've done more detailed in, so if I can think of it, I will link you up. All right, and then the finishing touch on this layout is going to be a few of these butterflies that I painted earlier in the month. Again, it's that same mica paint on black paper, and I'll link you up to that video as well. And then I've got some of these enamel dots. I'd pulled out some buttons from my kit, but I decided it didn't need them here, and so that finishes off my layout for this time. We'll get a close-up of what that mica paint looks like here in a moment, and there it is. It adds some shimmer in real life that really is hard to capture on camera, but there you go. That is my project for this time around. I hope you will go check out the Counterfeit Kit Challenge if you don't already know about us. Totally free group, great for using up your stash and being inspired to scrapbook. Until I am back with you next week, I hope you have an artful day.